and principles. Oops, sorry about that. So for those of you who might have had a chance to see the Pelian principles, at least I know that Marion had a chance from taking a look. So thank you for doing that. Did anybody else get some free time to look at the document? If you didn't, that's okay. There'll be a quiz at the end of this. Oh, anyway, if you get a chance to take a look at it, really the basics of it, and Marion, feel free to correct me if you think this is wrong. To me, they really hit the nail on the head about really the police are there for the community and a representative of the community, and they gain their legitimacy through the community and their abilities through the community. And so you're talking about a document or principles that were put forward in 1829, and we're in 2021, and I still think it holds as much water now as it did then. And really, a lot of agencies, if they've strayed away from this, need to go back to it, because at least in my personal and professional opinion, that is what policing should be. And unfortunately, I think it's changed in some ways, some because of necessity, in other ways because of I feel some misguided intentions at times. But I wanted to at least come back and offer a chance at some questions, and then to also touch on how we have some of those recommendations. They've already been built in our policy, and they have been for quite a number of years, because it's just really, there are things I think that we should be doing, and like duty to intervene and report if there's excessive force or misconduct, not allowing chokeholds unless it's a deadly force type situation, documenting use of force, requiring training on like crisis intervention, de-escalation, requiring those tactics to be used when appropriate. All of these things I think are just really good. And there are a lot of agencies that don't have it in there, either not in policy or they don't have access to that training. And a lot of that makes a very, very big difference on how police will conduct themselves, because that's what guides us in what we do, our training. Because if you don't have it and people are not given those kinds of skills or taught those skills, they're left to their own imagination at times. And you hope they make good decisions, and sometimes they haven't. So it's important to have those. I thought overall the Speaker's Task Force had some very good recommendations. Certainly would endorse it. So anybody have any questions about it? Yes, Marion.
Do. Something that was mentioned was the crisis response teams. And I wonder if some of the groups here are involved with you, or is that a county initiative? And part of this question is that last time you mentioned the need for funding, and to me this seems like a really a smart kind of collaboration. So that's something I thought I could write about if there wasn't adequate funding. So.
Well, we can always use more funding. There's no doubt about it. So to touch on it, I think you're talking about the crisis intervention teams.
Crisis intervention, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So about 70% of our officers, or 80%, I would say, are trained in crisis intervention training. And those crisis intervention teams, or CIT is what you'll hear for an acronym. The traditional model, or the model that was created, came out of Memphis, Tennessee. And it was a collaborative team between police officers, social workers, or counselors that would respond to mental health calls. People in mental health crisis that did not pose an immediate threat to themselves or others. These teams would go out, and then they would have conversations with the people in crisis, try to encourage them to seek therapy. A lot of times they had substance use disorders or dual diagnosis with mental health and substance use, and they would get them to those resources. So if a uniformed officer happened to get dispatched to a call and find out that it meets this criteria, they would say, well, I'm going to get some specialists here. And then this team of people would come over. It'd be like a plainclothes officer with those counselors, and then they would work through the problem. Now, Memphis is a large metropolitan area, so we don't have those kinds of resources. What we do have, though, is we have some good partnerships in the community right now, and our officers are trained in these de-escalation tactics, which is what crisis intervention is. We don't have enough capacity to have counselors or therapists with us on responding. We do have the ability, though, to call out what's called a mobile crisis unit if necessary, and then we get some counselors that can come out to a scene if need be. We also direct people to social services and crisis interventions as far as like psychologists to have conversations with them versus law enforcement. So years past, we would go right away to the calls, like we being the police. So we'd show up in uniform to these, and we're trained to handle a situation very quickly. But as you know, when people are in crisis with suffering from a mental health disorder, speed is not really what's going to be effective. And so we slow those things down. We'll call people to actually take the calls, and we'll ask people, do you need a police officer there? Or would you rather speak to a counselor? And then we'll put them in touch with groups like Northwest Connections or Human Services. So it's not necessarily like a team that will go out at this standpoint. We're working on that, though, for doing something called a quick response team. And that is part of our phase 2 for Project Hope. And what the quick response team does is that is a non-uniformed police officer. It would be a paramedic from the fire department, and then either someone from Human Services or one of our community partners that is a counselor or therapist. And we do home interventions on people who are either suffered from a recent overdose or are a high likelihood of heavily involved in drug addiction. So methamphetamine and opioids. And then we get them to counseling if they want it, therapy, rehabilitation. And if they can't afford it, we get them set up with insurance and other things like that that are sponsored to the state, and they can get the treatment. So that's on the way. So that's a 2022 process that we're hoping to get started. And last night, the city council gave me a motion of support to submit for several grants for that as well.
Okay.
So we're looking at about $1.4 million worth of grants to try to receive funding to bring people in to help us with that. And I'm optimistic. I hope we get it. And even if we don't get the grants, we can still do a modified version of it as well. So it's really taken quite a different approach to drug addiction and mental health. So crisis intervention was a big part of starting that, and we started that initiative about 5-6 years ago now.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Could I make a comment on that?
Sure.
It also, I would say, goes along with the domestic violence response team too, though. It's like sort of that same concept where we have a plainclothes officer generally and like an advocate that go and do home visits or meeting in a safe space with victims. But it's kind of that same concept that we're already doing. I mean, it's more targeted towards domestic violence victims, but same concept really. And I think we've been doing that for, going on 2 years now. And I think that's really shown a lot of progress in our community. And we've heard a lot from victims who have participated in that program, saying that they wouldn't have necessarily used our advocacy services, or they might not have gone further, like talking with law enforcement without that program.
Yeah, it's a very good program, and I'm glad that we're able to work together on that. And that's been wonderful in that sense. Is we started that with the lethality assessment program out of the Maryland, the Network Against Domestic Violence, quite a few years ago, and I just am so grateful for that partnership. I think it's helped a lot of people that have been stuck in domestic violence relationships.
Yeah,
I thought I saw. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying now my goal is to fit in sexual assault victims in there. So I've been talking about perhaps starting a SART in the community.
That would be outstanding.
It's my next goal for after I get back from vacation. I already have a list of the people I'm contacting. So you may or may not be on that list. Just putting it out there.
You can count us in, we'd help you in any way.
Thank you.
Pilar, I believe you had your hand up or were signaling earlier and I missed you.
No, I'm in Rice Lake, but I love, Eric, what you are doing.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
it's excellent. And but I love Menomonie Cares because everybody work in collaboration with everybody. I love Menomonie. I think what you're doing and what Angie's doing and everybody's doing, I moved to Menomonie. But I can, but it's for that I help them because it's the first community that I see that everybody use collaboration and you feel with you like you are psychological safety because you can talk, you can say something, everybody respect, everybody works, and it's a very, very nice community. And what you are doing with all these problems of these families, with it, they go to help, and what Angie is doing, they go to help to these families to be better, to do the to be better with the families, the kids are better, and you have a better community. If you need me for collaborate, I'm an early childhood education teacher, ex-head start, but I can help in the weekends. I will love. Now I begin to normal now that the pandemic is gone because I was like here with nobody. I was not in communication, only study, and that was really nice. Yeah, as my niece is here and visit me. But it's congratulations to everybody. That's nice. And count of me, I drive is 1 hour.
Yeah.
In the weekends, if you see families, I very good. I'm what I'm doing is how to do the executive function with the families and how they feel psychological safety is I was taking some courses in the university now that I'm here, but anyway, I can use my skills. And I promise to speak
Well, I
slow.
think we could probably use your help.
I love you. I go because I born for that. That's my goal. O sea, my my goal for being in United States is to help to build better communities. I don't have more goal. Just for that I come back and study and help everybody to need because we need to do a better communities and better United States.
Yeah.
Count of me. Bye.
Thanks, Pilar. Pilar, do you want to put your email in the chat?
Oh yeah, I put it to everybody. Let me change it here because I was talking to you.
Sure.
Everyone, okay. I love everybody.
We know.
I'm so excited. This is my happy day today.
Thank you. We've missed you.
Well, I like your enthusiasm. I feel energized just hearing from you.
I love it. We will need to fight for better United States when everybody was better. Yeah. Yeah. Be the best.
Well, I'll tell you, I would make a comment about Menomonie. One of the nice things about when I moved to the city here, folks were far more open to trying new things and partnerships. So I would say there was certainly a mindset of wanting to try alternatives to traditional methods in order to try to improve a community, and it's not that way everywhere. So it was rather refreshing. I feel it makes my job easier. So it's and more exciting and enjoyable to come to work too when you've got people that are willing to share ideas, be candid about it. They don't have to be the same ideas either, and people don't get necessarily offended by it, which is nice too. You can have a good adult conversations, get feedback, and then develop things to try to do better for everybody. So I'm with you, Pilar. This is a nice community, and it makes it fun to want to improve it.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's because that's very sad that Paul doesn't want to move there, but I don't care. I will move there and help because I think it's very difficult. We have civility, but you cannot see all the democracy. I'm sorry, not the democratic party, no, the democracy in the United States because some they are not like they don't have the skill, the social and emotional skill that the people they need to work together, understand others. And thus you begin to have civility. And this one is very difficult in communities to find. And when we have civility, we're very good community. It's like a Menomonie has it for that. I don't care if I drive 20 hours or take a plane, I go, because you are the best community in all Wisconsin, and I know. You are awesome, guys.
Pilar.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much, Pilar.
You're welcome.
But I want to ask if anybody else has their hand up. Warren, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm okay.
He's okay. Anybody else? I can't see because, okay, I see Kate has her hand up.
Okay, just a couple of things. First of all, Eric, I did, before my printer ran out of ink and I haven't gotten a new cartridge, I did print out Sir Robert Peel's Principles of Law Enforcement, and they are absolutely wonderful. And I'm just curious, how widely known are they?
Well,
I mean,
think
where
they're-
the heck did you find them?
Well, a student in history, I think in order to understand the present and improve the future, you have to look at the past, and you have to look at the good things, but you also have to look at the bad things, and you have to find out kind of where we came from. And Robert Peel, he's widely known in law enforcement.
Okay.
The Bobbies, like, so if you hear the term Bobby, they're named after Robert Peel as Bobby. The thing is, excuse me. So law enforcement has changed a lot over the years just because of the different history, like whether it's the political period, the reform period, or what they would call the community policing, and now we're in like a new reform type period. So it's always been evolving for some reasons. But what drew me to Robert Peel is in the research history of policing. This started, I would say, looking in the history about 15 or so years ago, was looking at the way policing practices were. Some seemed that worked really well and effective, but other things that just, they got results, but people were either not satisfied, or it was having unintended consequences. And so I took a look and tried to look into what is the history of policing in the United States. How does it tie with race relations, segregation, civil rights, Jim Crow laws, how that played a part, and then also what were alternatives in the world. So when people are talking about having like citizen groups that police their neighborhoods, there was some of that talk in Minneapolis. We've been through that. We had groups like that. They were called tithings, and then the other one was called the ward and watch system. And ward and watch was very simple. Was the ward during the day, you watch for invaders, you keep them out, and then at night you have the watch. So you're looking for fires, making sure there isn't a fire, because everything was wood, of course, because this is hundreds of years ago. The problem with that as society grew, you had issues with crime and disorder. Then you had the tithings, and the tithings were essentially like you'd have a town of 100 people, and then 1 out of 10 in a family would be selected to become part of this tithing, and then they would police their community essentially. Problem with those is that now you have 10 individuals that were in control of what was happening in the community, and that could lead to corruption, which it did. And so then we move a little bit further along in history. We have the Highwayman Act, which was created over in England. And the Highwayman Act was because you had people on these roads, because now civilization is growing more so. And there are these thieves on the road. So as you're traveling, you're getting robbed. So they created this Highwayman Act to police the roads. And then part of the issue that came out of that is you had the people that were trying to stop the highwayman thieves started stealing the stuff that they were retrieving or recovering. So they were becoming corrupt. And so anyway, you kind of get to this Robert Peel. And Robert Peel, who became a future leader for England and prime minister, that was the word I was trying to look for. It was escaping me. But anyway, he felt that if you're going to have police, like true police, they need to be professional. They need to be educated. They need to have a proper code. They need to have laws, and they need to have the consent of the people. And otherwise, you're going to have people trying to control these areas, and that can lead to corruption. So that's where the London Metropolitan Policing Act came in. So when I hear of things about just having neighborhoods or a certain group that is going to be in charge of watching for stuff that are not professional, not trained, I think right away back to Tithings, the ward and watch system. And I think if you're going to want to go down that road, we need to take a look at the history. And so to me, having collaborative approaches, so whether it's like crisis intervention teams, working for response teams for like domestic violence or sexual assault, you need to have a community approach. And because those people that are in that collaborative approach, they have different expertise, they have different skills, they bring something different to the table. And unfortunately, America has kind of used law enforcement as a one size fits all for societal discord. And yeah, we're law enforcement and cops will enforce the law. And you hope that the laws are fair and just, but then there's opportunity. If they're not, then it can be misused. So working together with other people who have also other skill sets, other viewpoints too, they look at things with a different lens, that makes a big difference. Like you just talked a few years ago, officers were not trained on what the neuroscience of addiction would be, understanding why people would relapse. They wouldn't have been taught what's called criminogenic needs, which is what drives criminal behavior, and then how to use that knowledge to implement crime prevention strategies to, one, stop the crime from happening, but then more importantly, how to help that person so they don't get involved in the crime, basically taking a public health type approach, because that's the root cause of the criminal behavior. So that's why you take a look at the changes into approaches for mental health, substance use disorders, working with education or juveniles, getting them the right kind of education, and helping adults overcome barriers that they might come across. Yes, Marianne.
Eric, have you seen the comment from Sammy? I think that I think it's a good one, and maybe can everybody read that?
I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say yes. So the comment is this program project one that you could see moving into other communities, police departments like Eau Claire, neighboring departments, talk with each other. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things with that. So first off, on the mental health stuff, we could touch on that real quick. Right now, my department, along with our communications center, sheriff's office, village departments, university department, other cities here in Dunn County are meeting right now to look at what's called like mental health deflection. So if someone calls up our dispatch center and says, hey, I'm depressed, or I might have some suicidal ideation. So instead of right away dispatching law enforcement, they would work on a series of questions. Are you harming yourself right now, or are you in threat of harm? No. Okay. Go to the next question then. Do you need to see a police officer right now? Or would you rather see a counselor to talk to someone or another specialist? If it's no, I don't need to see an officer, that's fine. Then they look at connecting the person with some resources. If at any time they say, yes, I want to have a police officer goes. If there's a threat to the community themselves, then okay, police officer will go, but then we'll make an assessment. And sometimes going right up to a person's house, if they're threatening themselves, that's not an appropriate situation. Traditionally, we go right up there. The reality is that doesn't always work, because sometimes you've heard about suicide by cop, right? People will do things to trigger what will get us to use deadly force. Sometimes they want that, unfortunately. And what we trained our folks to do here in our department, as well as the other departments here in the county, that there are other alternatives to that for a response, and it's worked out very well. So yes, I see that changing. A lot of communities are working on doing that the last couple of years. So I would see that spreading. I see more and more departments taking those police and community collaborative initiatives. Some of the organizations that they come out of are like PARI, Police Addiction and Recovery Initiative. You have those Quick Response Team International and Police Treatment Community Collaborative. Madison has a program like that. Eau Claire is developing one where they're onboarding a social worker that will work with mental health calls. And so that's pretty exciting for Eau Claire Police Department, or at least I think it is. And for us, we're working with other, we're developing our partnerships in the community to help do those. So yeah, I to be frank, this is where law enforcement and helping a community needs to go. Because you can't rely on the police to do it all. That's it's not effective. It's like using a hammer to make glass. It'll break it, but it's not necessarily going to mold it into something beautiful. It has its purpose, but you need to have that partnership. So yeah, I do think it's going to go in those communities that are hesitant to do that stuff. They're only harming themselves. We have to let go of our egos and some of our traditions and look at working together on solving some of these problems and taking a different approach. So and plus that helps build trust. And I think everybody wants the same thing, whether you take a look at the law enforcement in the US or activists or protesters, all they want is a safe community. They want equal opportunity and equitable outcomes. I don't think any of those things are bad. You just got to find a way to get to it.
Are there other, thanks, Eric. Does anyone else have their hand raised?
Me.
Renee, can I give Renee a chance?
Yeah.
Okay, Renee.
Did you say Mary or Renee?
I said Renee.
Okay, thank you. So Chief Atkinson, thank you so much for what you've been sharing today. I read the principles and I found them to be very clear. On another topic, though, I'm quite alarmed by all of the gun violence that we are seeing in the United States. And I just wondered if you could please share with us what kind of attitudes that you see in the Menomonie area relative to guns and shootings and things like that. If y'all are taking any special actions to minimize that behavior, I would appreciate knowing about that. Thank you.
Sure, you're talking about a very complicated issue and one that's very sensitive to a lot of people. So a couple things. We're in Northwest Wisconsin, and oh boy, so many homes have guns. It's the United States. Guns are just a thing here. For me, at least in my history, I was never a hunter or anything like that. I didn't even shoot my first gun until I had an internship with the United States Marshal Service. So to me, if I wasn't a police officer, I wouldn't even own one, to be frank. But anyway, to get to your gun violence, one of the problems I see with the gun violence is one that there's so many guns. They're easy access to them. Whether it's purchasing them legally or purchasing them illegally, that becomes an issue. The other part of it is even on the legal ownership, a lot of times they get stolen in burglaries and then they get onto that black market. So it's difficult to put a stop to those kinds of crimes. And one of the issues that people look at is, well, if we had tougher sentencing guidelines for people that possessed guns and whatnot, would that abate the problem? In a way, but I don't think it's necessarily going to fix it, because it's like anything. Let's take someone who has been a heavy substance use user and they get incarcerated. If they're not going to get treatment, is that really going to solve the problem? They'll come back out, and then in all likelihood they'll get engaged back into abuse. Not all, but some, but a lot will. Well, when we're talking about the gun violence, this really needs to start with educating youth to understand gun safety. Also untreated mental illness. You also are dealing with gang problems. And so a lot of youth will join gangs to fill that void where they don't have family. They don't have a sense of belonging, and they don't have a sense of safety. And then it leads to a lot of that gun violence that takes place. So if people are really interested in driving this, and this is a long-term type strategy to use, and it's not, how do I best put it? It's difficult for people who are policymakers, because this would take an extremely long time to do this, an investment in a lot of resources, finances, and people, because you're going to have to educate, you're going to have to provide a lot of different services. And I'll get to the question about the bias here in just a moment. And people want a quick fix. That's where you see a lot of that sentencing. You got to get tough and just lock them up. But you can't lock people up forever. Eventually they're going to get out, and they can go back to it. So as far as those strategies go, part of our strategy, you'll hear a lot in like our Project Hope and our other community policing strategies, and problem policing strategies are geared towards substance use, mental health disorders, those sorts of things. The education, treatment, and counseling for that, a lot of those folks that are involved in the gun violence are experiencing those other issues. So if we're able to stop that issue as young children and young adults, they can grow into being safer, like true adults, and making better decisions. And then those adults that are in that kind of criminal activity, where they're engaging in potential violence, or they're involved in criminal activity that leads to that, if we can provide ways to get them help and assistance, hopefully we're going to stop like the shootings, the murders, and taking place. Because if you look at the homicides we've had in this area, all of those folks suffered greatly in those areas. And so my sincere hope is, if we're able to provide these services at a young age and then have ways to overcome this stuff as people become adults, we'll see a drop in crime. And we've seen drops in criminal activity since we've implemented a lot of these different types of things over the last 10 years. So it doesn't sound cool like Operation Falcon or something like that, or a clean sweep where you're rounding everybody up. It takes time, dedication, and caring. And it's easy to cast someone aside and objectify them and say, well, just lock them up. They're still people. And I still believe that if you can provide those kinds of services, we'll overcome some of that violence. The challenge is, in my opinion, is doing that across the United States. And not everybody feels the way I do. I hope I'm right. I hope history proves that is the way to do it. But not everybody feels the same way I do. And it's challenging. So I hope that answers the question, Renee. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, that's excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Pilar, you had a question about,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary, you were, I think, first, and then I'll get to you, Pilar. Is that okay?
It's only 5 minutes. Yeah.
I'm going to have to leave pretty quick. Eric, I just want to say thank you so much for your clarity and for the attitude and exuberance with which you approach these issues. So glad you're in Menomonie Cares.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad I'm here too. Thank you, Mary. Yes, Pilar, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's only 5 minutes because it's the time. But, when I was teaching like in Head Start, I see before that and now more, that all these families, they have unconscious bias or implicit bias with the police. Because I say they have, the police come. So this hate, because what is happening? Because I was talking with my professor what I got to do, because they have all these kids, and I begin to do unconscious. Everybody has unconscious bias, but when this happen, they begin more unconscious and more aggressive, and they begin bias. No, they are not unconscious. And I begin to do in my classes to invite the police, and the kids say no because he put in jail to my mom or whatever. But they went to see I have some pictures of my things when I invite the police, those the moms begin to understand the police and why they do it, and it's what for them. And entonces the unconscious bias, they begin to have non-conscious because they begin to understand what is happening, and they got to understand that not all the police, they are the same, and they begin to cooperate. But this is awesome that the police cooperate with the families, because it's how a communities need to be, cooperation and understand the police why they went, because that's going to be better. But it's, I think the schools, they need to teach unconscious bias to the people. I don't know. It's what I got to ask you, Erica, because we don't have a lot of time, but
Sure, I'll be quick on it. I do think schools should teach that, or at least understand that our biases do impact the way we think, and try to avoid it, because we all have different biases. We all have different experiences, so we look at things differently. And just like people don't want to be profiled or stereotyped, I certainly don't want to be that way either. And right now, it just seems like America is just so divided, and you're either on one side or the other, and there's no in the middle. I think trying to teach about biases and how to work through them, build that trust. That's why I worry when people say, well, we'll just kick the cops out of the schools, or we're not going to do this. Well, if I'm a stranger to you, how are you going to trust me? How are we going to get past some of those differences and things that have happened? And so I agree with what you're saying. I worry that we're going to get further divided as a country. I hope we can overcome that.
thank you, because I was doing that to fix the moms, because a lot of people, they have meds labs and all this kind of, the moms begin to understand the policeman, and the kids begin to love the policeman. And I do it one a month, because I think if people do it like that, they lose the afraid that now they have to the police, the unconscious bias and the bad information, because nobody is the same. They don't
Right.
have the same feeling. It's like I think. Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you, everybody. That's awesome what I learned about you.
Yes.
Oh, Norman?
In the schooling system, we're taught to be a good student, but not a good person.
Yeah, I would love to see in the schools, and this is why I like our Botvin life skills program we're bringing into the schools. Yeah, it has a drug education piece, but it really focuses in on being a good person, building self-esteem, avoiding bullying, how to be emotionally resilient, avoid biases, those sorts of things. And I would love schools to be able to do that. I know a lot of it's regulated on curriculums and mandates, and education is a very tough K through 12, no doubt about it, with what they have to deal with and work with. I really wish they would focus in on that, how to be a good civil adult, grow into a good adult, making good adult decisions, that other viewpoints are okay, how to work through disagreements, those sorts of things. Because there's value in avoiding groupthink. We don't want to all think the same, but we should want to work together. Yes, Marion.
Yeah, I thank you for those comments. And it's clear that in the schools, people like Pilar are teaching values. So I think it's probably a mixed situation, and you're fortunate to be in a classroom where someone knows how to share values. And what I wanted to hear you comment on, last week you mentioned that Derek Chauvin was a different person, than when he throughout his life. The trauma that he has experienced has changed him. And I thought about that, and what I would love to hear you talk about is how you help people on the force to recover from being witness to traumatic situations, maybe not of their own making. I think that it's a very pressurized experience. When people go out on a call, it's really very pressurized. And then, so how do you deal with that? And do you think that community partners can support that in any way?
First, yes, community partners can support it. We have a chaplain program. We have an employee achievement program that was put into place about 6-7 years ago. I brought in, and they provide therapy for law enforcement. They provide, and non-sworn too. So our support staff has access to it as well. And then we do debriefings with therapists. If we have like a homicide, a traumatic incident, if an officer was assaulted, and then we do check-ins. We have very honest conversations with each other, that if we notice all of a sudden kind of an attitude change, a mood change, someone was positive and all of a sudden it's, okay, Eric is acting kind of dark lately. We go and talk to the person, and we'll send them to a counseling session, and it's confidential. And we do that because we don't want people to have either one significant trauma, like one traumatic experience that builds up and really impacts you, or the progressive trauma that takes place over years of constant negative calls and seeing the stuff that builds up. And I know I'm not the same person I was 23 years ago going to the job, not even remotely. It does impact you as far as your emotions and how you view things. And it's important to recognize that, how it changes, so that way it doesn't cause you to make bad decisions, and that you're doing things for the right reasons. The other part of why we do the therapy stuff too is we don't want to get to the point where we're hardening ourselves so much that we become disconnected from the people we're serving, and they become objectified. And when that happens, that's when you start seeing the excessive force. You see the misconduct, those things that take place. So I'll never discount. I'm sure there are people that are definitely prejudiced and outright bigoted. I think a lot of times when you're talking about these use of force things, I'm not so sold that those folks, it's because they were a person of color. I'm thinking that it's because of that they've begun to objectify people. Could be the training, could be the culture, could be a variety of different things that go to it. So you have to address all those all throughout a person's career, from the time you're recruiting them all the way till the day they retire. Because if you don't, it's very easy to slip into that, like to cast someone off. Who cares? They're a drug addict. Who cares? They're stealing stuff. Big deal. No one's gonna care about it. But when you start engaging into that kind of thought, that's a real problem, because we're public servants. We're here to help people. And if you don't look at people like they're people, I think we can agree that that's a big problem. I think we've all seen people that have done that, that no longer look at people like what they are, human beings.
Thank you so much for the way that you are a leader.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I try.
And I think I noticed that we're just about out of time. I want to respect everyone's time. If there's someone that didn't get a chance to speak right now, do you have a question? If Eric has a few minutes, otherwise we'll close the session. Is there anybody? Oh, Kate has a question. Okay, is that okay, Eric? You have some more time?
Yeah, that's fine. I got about 15 more minutes, if that's okay.
Actually, I know that our meeting is about to end, and this was actually not directed at Eric. I just wanted to say that my response to I'm so pleased at the response to signing up for the table at the farmer's market. I may not get to getting back to people until after I get back, because I'm leaving tomorrow morning for 10 days, but I think we're still fine time-wise. Just let people know that. Thank you.
Well, then I think that we will wrap up just with a great expression and just to express our great appreciation to you, Eric, for sharing not only what's going on now, but the history. And it's good to understand, the history of anything as we move into the present and the future. What are the roots? It's really been a great conversation. We all really, I can see from the nodding of heads that everyone has valued this very really vibrant discussion.
Well, thank you for giving me your time to
Mhm.
talk about it.
Well, we know we'll see you around the community and that we'll
Mhm.
see members of the force. Warren mentioned how that was just great to see the police officer at the Pride picnic, for example, and speaking with people and mingling too and watchful. So we'll be in touch then with Kate, and I want to thank everybody for their participation these last several months. It's been a very meaningful experience.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Good luck, Ashley. Great to meet you. See you soon. And Sammy, I'll send you that email.
Thank you. I will see you all later. Have a good day. Take care.
Yes, you too. Take care.